The day of the special lesson, the Alien Academy was buzzing with excitement. It was not a normal day. Today, there was going to be a special lesson, one that students had whispered about for weeks. It was going to be a live demonstration, and a real predator would be brought into the classroom. Many students felt nervous. Some tried to act brave, laughing and making jokes, but their eyes betrayed their fear. The classroom was large, with smooth silver walls and rows of floating desks. Different species sat side by side: tall reptilian creatures, small insect-like beings, and others with shimmering skin or glowing eyes. They all came from peaceful planets where danger was rare. They had read about predators in their books, but seeing one alive was something different. At the front of the room stood Mr. Kale, the human professor. He was a Deathworlder, a being from one of the deadliest planets in the galaxy, Earth. Deathworlders were famous. Everyone knew the stories. On Earth, plants could poison you, animals could eat you, even the air and water could sometimes kill you. Survival was a way of life for humans. Mr. Kale looked calm as he adjusted the thick black gloves on his hands. His sharp eyes scanned the room. He wore simple clothes: black boots, dark pants, and a gray jacket. Nothing about him seemed unusual, yet every student could feel the strange energy around him. It was like standing near a powerful storm, quiet but ready to explode. In the center of the room, a giant metal crate rested on the floor. It was locked with heavy chains. The crate shook every few seconds, and deep, angry growls came from inside. Students leaned forward, eyes wide. Some whispered to each other, wondering what creature was inside. "Good morning, students," Mr. Kale said, his voice steady and deep. "Today, you will witness what it means to face real danger. Not through theory, not through simulations, but through reality." Some students looked excited, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One small alien with green fur raised his hand and asked, "Sir, is it safe?" Kyle smiled, but it was not a comforting smile. "Safety," he said, "is an illusion, especially when you live on a death world." A few nervous laughs filled the room, but the tension stayed thick. Mr. Kale pressed a button on his wrist device and the crate's locks clicked open. The students held their breath. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent except for the low hum of the Academy's life support systems. Then, bam! The crate door burst outward with a loud crash. Chains snapped. A huge creature leapt out. It was twice the size of Kyle, covered in black fur with long, curved claws. Its red eyes glowed with rage. Rows of sharp teeth dripped with saliva. "The predator roared, a sound so loud that the walls seemed to vibrate. Panic exploded among the students. Desks flew into the air as they ran for cover. Some screamed, some tried to hide under their seats. A few fainted on the spot. Even the bravest ones froze in terror. But Mr. Kale did not move. He stood tall, facing the beast without a weapon, without armor, without fear. His face showed no panic, only calm focus. The predator sniffed the air and locked its red eyes onto him. Muscles tensed under its fur, ready to pounce. The students peeked from behind overturned desks and safety shields, expecting to see their teacher torn apart. One reptilian student whispered, "He's going to die. He's going to die." But Mr. Kale raised his hand, palm out, and made a low sound from his throat. It was not a word, but a command. The predator froze mid-step, confused. It tilted its head, growled uncertainly, and then slowly lowered itself to the ground, never taking its eyes off Kale. The students gasped. How was this possible? How could a human control such a dangerous beast with just a sound? Kale took a slow step forward. The predator growled again, but did not attack. It was waiting, watching, respecting. "You see," Kyle said, his voice calm and clear, "predators do not just sense weakness. They hunt it, they read your fear, they smell it, but if you show strength, true strength, you can control the wild." The students listened in stunned silence. None dared move, none dared interrupt. It was as if the air itself had changed. Heavier, sharper, full of unseen power. Kyle smiled again, but this time it was a smile of victory. "And today," he said, "you will learn not just about survival, but about dominance." The predator breaks loose. The classroom was frozen in shock. Mr. Kale stood tall in front of the wild creature, unarmed, untouched. The alien students watched, with wide, fearful eyes. Their minds could not believe what they were seeing. How could a human, smaller and weaker looking than the beast, stop it without fighting? But the peace was only for a moment. The predator suddenly snarled, louder and more furious. It snapped its jaws, slamming its claws into the floor. Sparks flew. It was not fully tamed. It was testing Mr. Kale, pushing for weakness. Kale didn't blink. He didn't flinch. His body stayed still, but his energy shifted, like a silent challenge. The alien students felt it too, like an invisible wave rolling across the room. Their hearts raced faster. For a second, the predator hesitated, but then instinct took over. It attacked. The creature lunged with terrifying speed, faster than most students could even see. Its claws slashed through the air straight toward Kale's chest. The whole room seemed to scream at once. But Kale moved like lightning. In one smooth step, he pivoted to the side, grabbing the creature by its thick fur. Using the beast's own momentum, he twisted and slammed it down onto the metal floor with a thunderous crash. The predator roared in rage, kicking and twisting, but Kale rode its movements like a surfer rides a giant wave. The students watched in horror and awe. To them, it looked impossible. A human was wrestling a Deathworld predator with bare hands, and winning. Kale kept one knee pressed against the creature's neck, pinning it down. His gloved hands gripped the beast's front limbs firmly, careful not to injure it but making sure it could not break free. His face was calm, focused, as if this was just another ordinary day at work. "You cannot show fear," Kyle spoke over the snarls and growls. "Fear is the language of prey. Strength is the language of survivors." The predator struggled harder, trying to throw Kale off. It thrashed, claws gouging deep marks into the floor. It tried snapping at him with its vicious teeth, but Kale stayed just out of reach, always one step ahead, always balanced. One student, a slim, blue-skinned alien with wide crystal eyes, whispered, How is he doing this?" Another, alien hiding behind a shield, answered with trembling voice, He's not fighting it. He's controlling it." Kyle slowly adjusted his grip, leaning close to the beast's ear. He made that same low, rumbling sound again, deeper, almost vibrating through the air. The predator twitched, and then stopped, struggling. Its breathing stayed heavy, its body tense, but it no longer tried to attack. The entire room went deathly silent. The students could barely process what they were seeing. On their home planets, predators like this were handled only with cages, weapons, and heavy tranquilizers. Even then, accidents were common. Yet here, a human had brought one to submission with nothing but hands, skill, and willpower. Kyle slowly released his grip and stood up. The predator stayed down, growling lowly but making no move to attack again. It knew it had been defeated, not by force alone but by something deeper, something older than fear. Kale turned to his students. His jacket was torn at the sleeve, showing a deep scratch, but he didn't seem to notice or care. "This," he said, breathing steady, "is the true lesson. Survival is not about strength. It is about understanding, about commanding respect." He walked calmly to the teacher's podium, leaving the beast lying quietly behind him like a scolded dog. His boots clicked sharply against the floor, each step full of purpose. Some students slowly came out of hiding, still shaking. Others just stared, too stunned to move. Kyle allowed them a moment to absorb what they had witnessed. Then he spoke again, voice firm. "For the next exercise," he said with a small smile, "I'll need a volunteer." The silence that followed was even deeper than before. No one moved. Not a single hand rose. The Deathworlder had just redefined everything they thought they knew about fear, power, and survival. And now, they realized, The power of fearlessness. The classroom was filled with heavy silence. The air itself seemed frozen after what they had witnessed. Mr. Kale stood by the podium, calm and unbothered, while the predator, a beast that could tear through steel, stayed crouched on the floor, its breathing slow and defeated. The alien students still couldn't understand it. Their hearts were pounding. Their minds raced. How had the human done it? How had a small, fragile Deathworlder conquered a monster without weapons? Kale's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Fear is a chain," he said, his eyes moving over every trembling student. "Once you are trapped by it, you are already defeated." The students exchanged nervous glances. Some clutched their safety shields tighter. Others tried to look brave, but Kyle could see the fear in their eyes. It was as clear as sunlight on water. "Understand this," Kyle continued, stepping slowly toward the pinned predator. "The predator does not attack the strongest target. It attacks the one that believes they are weak." As if to prove his point, Kale did something unthinkable. He turned his back to the creature. Gasps filled the room. No one could believe it. Turning your back to a live predator was a death sentence on most planets. But Kale did it without hesitation, without a single glance behind him. His movements were slow, confident, full of silent command. The predator twitched, but did not attack. It watched him with wary respect, like a soldier recognizing a superior in battle. The student's fear slowly changed into something else: curiosity. A tall, feathered alien leaned forward, forgetting to hide. A tiny, six-legged creature climbed up on a desk for a better view. They were seeing something they had never been taught: the power of fearless presence. Kale turned back around and faced them again. His eyes were serious but not cruel. "Fearlessness," he said, "is not pretending the danger isn't real. It's knowing the danger is real and standing anyway." Slowly, the students began to understand. It was not about being stronger. It was not about being faster. It was about being unshakable in the face of death. Kale moved closer to the students now, walking between the broken desks and scattered chairs. Every eye followed him. "I come from a world," he said, his voice deep and steady, "where every breath is a gamble, where storms tear the sky open, where beasts 10 times bigger than this one roam free. On Earth, we do not survive because we are the biggest. We survive because we refuse to kneel to fear." His words hit the students harder than any blow. They had studied Earth's harsh conditions in their books: the deadly animals, the poisonous plants, the burning deserts and freezing tundras. But hearing it from a living human, standing in front of a real predator, was different. It was real. Now, one brave student, a young insectoid with shimmering green skin, slowly raised a trembling hand. But how do you do it, sir?" the student asked, voice shaking. "How do you not fear death?" Kyle's gaze softened. He walked closer to the student, crouching down to their level. "I do fear it," he said quietly. "Every creature does. But I choose to master my fear before it masters me." He stood back up, tall and commanding once again. "And now," Kyle said, voice loud enough for all to hear, "it's time for you to begin." The student stiffened. Before anyone could object, Kyle pressed a button on his wristband. A hidden wall slid open behind him, revealing 3 more cages, each one holding a different predator. The creatures roared, pounded, and clawed at their enclosures. Their presence filled the room with raw terror. This was no longer just a demonstration. It was a trial. Kyle pointed to the first cage. "Who among you will step forward?" he asked. Silence gripped the classroom like a heavy chain. No one moved. Fear pulled at them, weighed down their limbs. They looked at each other, hoping someone else would be braver. Kale's eyes narrowed. "This is your first real lesson," he said. "Not about strength, not about fighting, about controlling your mind. Only by mastering your fear can you ever hope to master the galaxy." A long moment passed. Then slowly, very slowly, a small figure stood up from the back row. It was the same insectoid student who had asked the question. Every eye turned toward them. The room held its breath. With trembling legs but a steady heart, the student took one step forward, then another, toward the first predator's cage. Kyle smiled faintly. Not mockery, not amusement. Respect. The ancient technique, the classroom was a battlefield of emotions, fear, curiosity, and something new. Respect. The small insectoid student stood before the first predator's cage, legs trembling but fists clenched with determination. The predator inside growled low, sensing the fear and the fight. Mr. Kyle watched silently, his arms folded across his chest. His eyes were sharp, measuring every breath, every heartbeat in the room. Without a word, Kyle moved to the center of the room. He knelt down, picked up a handful of dust from the cracked floor, and let it flow through his fingers. Every student stared, confused. What was he doing? In the ancient days of Earth, Kale said, voice steady, we had no weapons, no armor, only our hands, our instincts, and our will. He stood, brushing his hands clean. His gaze swept across the students. We survived by reading the wild, not just with eyes, but with the soul. He faced the cage and showed them how. Feet firmly planted, back straight, breathing slow. Hands open, showing strength without aggression. Eyes locked onto the predators without blinking. A silent message. I am not your prey, the predator. Inside the cage responded instantly. Its snarling softened, its aggressive stance lowered slightly. It felt the silent pressure, the presence of a creature that would not break. This is the ancient technique, Kale said, his voice like thunder in a quiet storm. No lasers, no shields, only pure dominance of spirit. He stepped back and nodded at the insectoid student. Now, you try. The room tensed. The student hesitated, but then mimicked Kale's posture, feet strong, back tall, breathing steady. The predator snarled, then paused. It sniffed the air, confused. Whispers rippled across the class. He's doing it. Is it working? Kyle smiled slightly. It's not about strength of body, he said. It's about strength of belief. The predator paced inside the cage but did not attack. It respected what it sensed, a will that would not be broken. For the first time, the students understood. Survival was not only physical, it was psychological. The ancient humans had survived because they mastered fear, both theirs and the beasts. Kale turned to the class once more, voice low but powerful. Out here, in the real galaxy, weapons can fail, shields can fall. Only the mind, only the heart, will keep you alive. The students leaned forward now, their fear slowly melting into fascination. They were no longer watching a lesson. They were witnessing a living memory from a brutal, beautiful world called Earth. The Deathworlders' true strength was now clear. Not brute force, not violence, but the ancient, unstoppable will to survive. Testing the students, the insectoid student stood frozen before the predator's cage. His breathing was shaky but steady. Behind him, dozens of alien classmates watched with wide, unblinking eyes. Every second felt like a lifetime. Mr. Kyle, standing off to the side, studied them silently. He could see the fear in their bodies, the stiff arms, the tense jaws, the darting glances toward the exits. Good. Fear was natural, but what mattered now was what they would do with it. Kale took a step forward and spoke, his voice calm but heavy with meaning. Now, he said, the real lesson begins. The floor shifted with a low mechanical hum. New cages, hidden in the ground, rose slowly around the room. Inside each, different predators paced, some small and fast, others huge and deadly. Their roars and growls filled the air like a rising storm. Panic rippled through the students. One of the winged students backed away, wings fluttering in fear. A lizard-like student dropped his datapad with a clatter. Another alien whispered, "This is madness. We are not Deathworlders." Kyle raised a hand, silencing the chaos. "You are not here to fight them," he said. "You are here to face yourselves." He pointed at the insectoid student, still holding his ground by the first cage. This one has already begun. A small spark of pride flickered in the insectoid's nervous eyes. Kyle's gaze swept the room. Now, who will join him? For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, one by one, students began to rise. A reptilian with scales like silver. A slim, tall alien with glowing eyes. Even the winged one gathered courage and stepped forward. They formed a line beside the insectoid, facing the cages, facing their fear. Kale walked in front of them like a commander inspecting his army. "You will not use weapons," he said. "You will not hide. You will stand. You will look into the eyes of the beast and show it the power of your spirit." He pointed to the first cage. "You, step forward." The silver-scaled reptilian swallowed hard but obeyed. He moved to stand before a predator with 6 legs and jaws like steel traps. Kyle guided him in a low voice. "Plant your feet. Breathe slowly. Show no weakness." The student mimicked the ancient posture Kale had taught. Chest out, shoulders firm, eyes locked. The predator growled, but did not attack. The student gasped in shock but held his ground. The class behind him watched in awe. For the first time they saw it. The invisible war between fear and the will was winning. Kyle's expression remained unreadable, but inside he felt a quiet satisfaction. They were learning. One by one, the students stepped forward. Each faced a different predator. Each fought a different fear. Some failed, stumbling back when the beasts roared too loud. Kyle did not scold them. He simply nodded and told them to try again. Others succeeded, standing firm even as sharp teeth snapped inches from their faces. Every small victory was met with quiet nods of approval, not applause. This was not a game. It was survival. The atmosphere of the room changed slowly. Where once there had been terror, now there was determination. Where once there had been weakness, now there was strength. Not physical strength, but something far greater. Kyle watched it happen with a proud, silent heart. Not every student would become fearless today, but today they would all know that fear did not have to own them. He stepped to the center once more and raised his voice. "Remember this day," he said. "You faced what you feared most. And you stood. That is what it means to survive. That is what it means to live as a Deathworlder." The predators in the cages growled. The metal walls hummed with tension, but the students stood taller than ever before. The lesson was no longer about survival skills. It was about becoming something greater than fear. It was about becoming legends. Respect. Earned the hard way. The training room, once filled with fear and panic, now carried a different energy. It was quiet, but not the silence of terror. It was the heavy, powerful silence of respect. The students stood in a broken line, breathing heavily, sweat glistening on scales, fur, and skin. They had faced living nightmares and survived. Not by running, not by hiding, but by standing tall, following the ancient lessons of a Deathworlder. Mr. Kale stood at the center of it all, arms crossed over his chest, a small smile hidden behind his sharp, steady gaze. Above them, unknown to the students, a panel in the observation deck had shifted open. Watching from behind reinforced glass stood the Academy's highest authorities, professors, researchers, and the headmaster himself. They had come to witness a human teacher's method, ready to criticize. Instead, they found themselves speechless. No technology, no weapons, no safety fields had protected these students today. Only the humans' ancient, raw survival teachings, and their own newfound courage. The headmaster, a tall, thin alien with golden skin, folded his many arms across his chest and whispered, "Remarkable." Beside him, a professor muttered, We underestimated Deathworlders." Inside the room, Kale called the students to attention. "You came here today as scholars," he said, his voice strong enough to echo off the silver walls. "You will leave as something more." He let the words hang in the air, heavy with meaning. Many in this galaxy think Deathworlders are dangerous because we are violent, Kyle continued, pacing slowly in front of them. But that is not our true strength. The students watched him with wide, focused eyes. The same students who, just hours ago, had flinched at every noise, had doubted every word. Our strength, Kale said, is that we have made peace with fear. We do not let it own us. He stopped walking and turned to face them fully. You have tasted that strength today. Remember, carry it. Because one day when everything seems lost, it will save your life. A deep, almost spiritual silence followed. Then, without warning, the predators behind the cages gave a low, rumbling growl, not of rage, but of acknowledgement. Even the beasts seemed to recognize the shift in the room. They too sensed it. The students had changed. Across the academy, rumors began to spread like wildfire. Whispers filled the halls. The Deathworlder tamed the predators. The students faced real beasts without weapons. They did it with nothing but willpower. The legends of Earth, once considered exaggerated stories, suddenly felt very real. Students who had mocked Mr. Kale in the cafeteria now looked away in shame when he passed. Professors who once questioned why a Deathworlder was allowed to teach now requested private meetings, asking to learn what he knew. Respect, Kale knew, was never given easily, especially by species who lived peaceful, comfortable lives. It had to be earned. Earned the hard way. Earned through fire and fear. Kale didn't seek applause. He didn't crave medals. He only cared about one thing, that the galaxy remembered what true survival meant. And now, they would. As the students slowly filed out of the training room, heads held higher, steps firmer, Kyle remained standing alone by the cages. Behind him, the predators growled softly, no longer enemies, but living reminders of a battle fought and won without violence. Kale closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the heavy air. Another lesson complete. Another seed of strength planted, and deep inside he knew. These students, these fragile beings from peaceful worlds, had taken their first real step toward understanding the spirit of a Deathworlder. Not with claws, not with guns, but with the unbreakable fire inside the soul. The true lesson of Deathworlders. The sun was setting over the academy, painting the skies in deep gold and soft violet. The training room was quiet now. Empty desks stood scattered like forgotten memories of the day's chaos. The predators had been returned to their secure enclosures. The students had gone, carrying with them something invisible, something far more valuable than any textbook. Mr. Kale remained behind, standing alone in the fading light. He watched the last rays of the sun slip through the high windows, casting long shadows across the scarred floor, the marks of claw strikes and fear and courage. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. It was the headmaster, followed by a small group of senior professors. Their faces, once full of doubt, now held a different expression: humility. The headmaster spoke first, his voice careful, respectful. You have changed them. Kyle didn't turn around. He simply nodded once. The headmaster hesitated, then added, You have changed us. For a long moment, there were no words between them, only understanding. Finally, Kale spoke, his voice low but full of steel. Books teach knowledge, he said. But pain teaches truth. The professors listened silently. Kyle turned to face them. His eyes, calm, sharp, ancient, met theirs. Deathworlders do not survive because we are cruel, he continued. We survive because we understand one thing that many forget. Survival is not a gift. It is a choice made every day. He stepped forward, each word cutting deeper than any blade. Strength, Kyle said, is not the absence of fear. Strength is walking forward even when fear holds your heart in its jaws. The professors looked away, unable to meet his gaze. It was not shame. It was respect, raw, pure, and earned. Kyle let the silence grow heavy, pressing the lesson deeper. Then he softened his voice and said almost kindly, This lesson was not just for them. It was for all of you too. Outside the academy, the first stars of the evening blinked into view. Distant suns shining cold and bright across the endless dark. Cale looked up at them, his face calm, thoughtful. One day, he said more to himself than to anyone else, these students will leave this academy. They will travel worlds where rules break, where peace shatters, where safety is a lie. He glanced back at the professors. And when that day comes, he whispered, the lessons of equations and theories will not save them. He placed a hand lightly over his chest. But this will. The professor stood still, absorbing the weight of his words. Without another glance, Cale turned and walked away, his footsteps slow and sure. The golden light swallowed him, making his silhouette stretch tall against the walls. No medals would be given. No grand speeches would be made, but that day something far greater was earned, the true respect of the academy, the quiet understanding of survival, and the beginning of a new legend, the legend of the Deathworlders' lesson. As Mr. Cale disappeared, down the hallway a single thought echoed in the minds of everyone he left behind. Fear can break a body, but courage can build a soul. And somewhere deep inside, the students who once trembled in terror now stood a little taller under the alien stars, carrying forward the unstoppable spirit of Earth, the spirit of a Deathworlder, forever.